What's up for the New York Mets? I'm Mike Janella, and joining me today is the Mets' newest director of Major League Operations, Liz Benn. Liz, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well, and better now that you've been talking to a lot of people lately. So I'm glad that you were able to carve out some time for us. You've been dealing with a lot of these headlines, right? You've made history, the highest ranking baseball ops woman in Mets history. Have you let that sink in yet? What's your life been like with this news now since you got the official hire?
I think it sunk in a little bit today when I actually got to the stadium and I was, walking through the clubhouse, looking at the field. I was sitting in the dugout thinking, okay, this is really happening now because until now I've just been in my apartment on my couch. So I see the headlines rolling in. I'm getting the notifications on social media, but actually stepping into the stadium today has been huge. It's pretty exciting.
Are you allowing yourself any time to kind of let it sink in this perspective of how historic this move is? Or are you more just like, I just want to get down to business right now?
I think I'm excited for kind of the hype to die down a bit so that I can kind of focus on the role. I think that yesterday what really hit me was I had kind of my first like real baseball ops meeting with Billy Epler and the AGMs, and it was just such an opportunity to learn how this stuff is done and just hear how those conversations go. And that's where it kind of started to sink in. I was realizing, okay, I'm the first woman to be in this room or at this table, and so that was pretty exciting. But I think what I'm honestly thinking is that I think it's going to be the flight down to spring training, possibly minor league spring training next week. And that's probably when it's going to sink in is okay, I'm on my way here. I won't have phone service, so nobody's going to be texting me, and I could actually let it kind of sink in and realize kind of what's going on.
Yeah, when you can put it on airplane mode, and literally in this case, that's when you can finally just sit with your thoughts and actually understand maybe the magnitude of what you've just accomplished. But this is just step one because you do have the job now to do. And every franchise is different, every organization is different, right? And how they handle this role and the front office. So, what do you expect this job to be for you, and how do you plan on tackling it and kind of making this role your own?
So it sounds like my main job is going to be roster management, construction, and transactions. And the transaction side I had experience doing at the commissioner's office. Really at the commissioner's office, I was learning the mechanics of how transactions actually work. And I'm really excited to really get into the strategy behind it, understanding why is this guy being optioned at this time? This guy's injured. How do we replace him? How are we kind of working with the farm director in order to make those decisions? So I'm really excited to just dig into that. And then I'll also be working on anything really related to major league players, whether that's the coaching and performance staff contracts or the clubhouse travel, anything related to the major league players, I'll have a hand on that.
You mentioned your experience working, with MLB, and it was many years there. And you started as an intern. You end up working your way up the ladder. What do you think your experience, what from your experience, I should say, in that position, do you think is going to help you most now with all these new responsibilities that you're expecting with the Mets?
So I was pretty fortunate that the people who I worked with in the baseball operations department, they were incredible teachers. So they were really patient with me as I was learning the transaction side and just the operation side. They fully explained the major league rules, regulations, and so that knowledge is solidified in me. And so I think that gives me a great foundation to work off of in this role. But aside from that, I mean, I've done player development. I've really kind of run the girls' baseball development side the last several years, but that is high school amateur player development and evaluation. I've also definitely learned how to manage a bunch of different responsibilities at once. It seems like I was kind of doing three different roles at the same time. And so my time management skills are definitely up to par. And I think that will be clearly an asset in this role when there are timely decisions to be made, especially during the season.
Yeah, I got a feeling time management's going to be kind of high on your priority list of skills that you need for a role like this, but maybe that's just me. You tell me. Speaking of your other skills, and you mentioned great teachers that you had there at MLB, you're a bit of a good teacher yourself. You've been an adjunct lecturer and you have so much life experience. So I'm curious about that, Liz. What do you think from your personal life growing up in Canada, even to pitching in what was the all men's New York Metro Baseball League before you showed up and started pitching at an all-star level? You have a master's in philosophy from Columbia, which I hear is a pretty good school. I couldn't get in. All of this, what do you think about you individually that you're going to bring to this position?
So I think that I'm pretty fortunate that just growing up and kind of even until a few years ago, my parents were just so encouraging of me doing whatever I actually genuinely enjoyed doing. There was never really pressure to, say, go do a business degree so you can get a job in business. It was always, you like this topic, go explore it and see what happens. So that allowed me to kind of gain this like diverse background of interests from baseball to philosophy. And so I think that's really kind of helped me just keep my mind open and be able to learn from other people too whenever I can. But I think the philosophy background, people always joke about how philosophers don't get jobs. Well, I'm here to prove them wrong.
You showed them.
But philosophy, yes, it is kind of these like stereotypes that you hear about, but really it's a discipline that teaches you how to think, how to reason, and how to see how other people are thinking. So that I think is really valuable in any role, but will definitely help me in this role. Because I teach philosophy, I've kind of learned how to communicate difficult or challenging ideas to other people. And so those communication skills will definitely come in handy. And then you mentioned too that I've played baseball. I've really played baseball my whole life. And so I know the game from the on-field standpoint too. I'm a pitcher in the Metro League. And so I understand the pressure of kind of being in the center of the field and having to execute every pitch, how to react in situations. If something doesn't go right, how do I adjust to kind of, bounce back from that? So I'm excited to just kind of bring all these things into this new role and see how they'll help me.
I want to read you a quote. I want to read something you said, Liz. If you remember this, a few years ago, The Athletic profiled you, and you said, "I never considered working in baseball when I was younger. I didn't really know that working in baseball was an option." Like you just said now, your philosophers don't get jobs. If they're you, they do. And at a very high level with one of the marquee teams in the sport, you've obviously turned this into a real option. How cognizant are you of your role kind of in baseball's ongoing evolution?
I think that it was kind of it was an interesting moment where I was kind of taken aback when I heard from my boss at the commissioner's office that the Mets had requested to interview me from this role. For several years, running the Take the Field program, which is MLB's program for women interested in front office roles and on-field roles, I was kind of running that program and helping a ton of women try to break into baseball. And over 3 years, over 50 women were hired. Several of them into the on-field coaching roles, which were seen as kind of the hardest roles to break into. And so I was kind of just like cheering these people on and helping them develop. But once that kind of shifted and a club started to have interest in me for that role, I was just taken aback and I was like, oh, wow, like I'm now this person kind of like breaking into this area. And it was just a really exciting opportunity. And I think it's something that I had considered the last couple of years, really since that article came out, in doing, and just getting this opportunity. I'm just thrilled to be able to go onto the club side and have that competitiveness too that you don't see in the commissioner's office.
Well, so much has changed. That profile was, I think, 3 years ago, and so much for you and for the sport has changed since then. Where do you see the game going for you individually and for women at large a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
So I think that one thing that is really cool is a lot of women are breaking into the entry level roles, including on field. I think that what I'm hoping is that we're going to see those women moving up in their organizations. I think one good example would be Rachel Balkovic. She's grinded it out for several years, many years, over 10 years now. And with the Yankees, she did such a good job in the minor leagues that they promoted her to a manager. And so those are the kinds of promotions that I'm hoping that we keep seeing over the next few years. Three women with Cleveland were promoted to the director level too. So we're starting to see women kind of go up to higher managerial and leadership spots in the game. And as for myself, I mean, I'm day 3 into the job. And so it's hard to have kind of a broader future outlook. But right now, it's just learn as much as I can from the amazing people around me. And it's exciting to come into a championship caliber team and, go for the World Series this year.
Hey, learning can only lead to good things, as you've already experienced in your life, and as I'm sure it's going to be the case for you in this role. I got a couple fun questions for you, Liz. We're going to play some Pepper in a bit. But lastly, what's your biggest message for both Mets fans on the baseball side and also anybody watching that maybe wants to follow in your footsteps someday? What do you want to make sure they know from you?
So for the Mets fans, I think that something that's extremely exciting is that just the leadership of Billy Epler in this role. I mean, in the first interview that I had, my first conversation with him, I was just really blown away by his approach to the team and his leadership. And so I think we're going to be extremely competitive this year, and I'm just really excited to see where we go. So hold us to those high expectations that you want to. We can be a World Series championship team. And to anybody who wants to follow in the footsteps, just know that you can do it. And there are a ton of people here to support you. And by that, I mean people who are on the same team as you, people who are women, but also men, people who are on opposing teams. I got texts from dozens and dozens of men who are with opposing teams saying, hey, we're so proud of you. We're so excited for you. We want to help you. Just, don't beat us. So there is a ton of support for you out there, and I'm excited to kind of see how that continues to grow.
Love to hear that, Liz. Well, we do like to end at least my conversations here with a couple of fun lightning round things. So I hope you're ready for this. You got quick reflexes. You got your pitching background. So I know some comebackers are nothing wrong for you. But who was your favorite player growing up? And I ask this because I know I've heard rumors you were, raised a Yankees fan. So who was your number one player growing up?
Derek Jeter. I wasn't a shortstop, but Derek Jeter was my favorite player growing up.
And I'm sure you'll have a couple of new choices as you continue in this Mets role moving forward, but good to know in the past. Secondly, obviously you've been in New York now for a few years, both for school and professionally. What neighborhood in the city do you most love hanging out in? What's your favorite place to be around here?
So I live in the Upper East Side, and I absolutely love living there. So like the park is there and everything. I'm a big art nerd, so there's a lot of museums. So I love that area. But then I also love kind of West Village. I do a lot in West Village. Really great restaurants. So love those two areas.
All right, so from the Upper East Side down to the West Village, you got Manhattan pretty much covered. I like it. You mentioned art, maybe something people don't know that much about you. Who's your favorite artist or a favorite movement if you have one?
So favorite artist growing up was Monet, but I'm actually very into street art. I almost went and did a street art master's at the the Art Institute of Chicago. So I'm a big Banksy fan too.
All right, yeah, who isn't a big Banksy fan, right? That's a cool hit answer. You grew up in Toronto, as most people know now. What is something, and you've grown to love New York City, as it sounds like, but what's something Toronto has that you wish New York did that we don't here?
This is such a stereotypical answer, but poutine. It's just like the ultimate comfort food. If anybody doesn't know what it is, it's fries, cheese curds, and gravy. You have to be very specific about the type of fries, the type of cheese curds, and the type of gravy. But I wish that there was good poutine in New York.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a recipe in mind or a specific place already you love going back to whenever you're north of the border.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, now I feel bad. I feel like I have to import some for you just to make you feel more at home
Yeah.
one of these days. What about, you mentioned the art. What do you like else do you like to do away from baseball? What are some hobbies? What does Liz Benn like to get up to for fun?
So yeah, I mentioned the arts. I love going to galleries. Just for fun, I started to try to figure out how to paint. I'm not good at it, but it's very cathartic for me. But also just love wandering around different areas or the park. I just like exploring and kind of seeing, different areas, different parts of architecture, how different neighborhoods are kind of laid out.
Man, very cool. The last one for you, Liz. This is for all the hitters in the New York Metro Baseball League that you've been, terrorizing over the last few years. I'm sure they want to know, with this new role, are you still going to have time to be a weekend warrior and get back on the mound, or can they not have to worry about facing you this upcoming season?
I will be trying to get back out there. I plan on, trying to chase a chip with my team, the Yonkers Rail Splitters. So while I might not be at every game this year, any chance that I get, I will definitely try to come back and still play.
Hey, and if you end up with 2 rings, this upcoming year, that wouldn't be too bad either. I think that's a good result for you.
Definitely. Absolutely. That's the goal.
All right. Well, Liz, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Congratulations again and continued best of luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mike.
All right. For Liz Benn, I'm Mike Janella. Thanks for watching, and let's go Mets.